I will call to order.
Bringing the Wildcat. You're going like the blue and gold.
Look, I was,
You're doing a little South Weymouth rep
I
right
know,
there.
and I'm a North Weymouth gal, so it's crazy.
It is 6 o'clock. I would like to call to order the January 22nd, 2025 Budget Subcommittee meeting. For those here and on Zoom, we are recording this meeting. And I will turn it to Brian for grants and gifts.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, if we could go back to just from last meeting.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Last. Dr. Sherlock Shanger, can you see it on your screen?
Yes.
Great. And we'll share these out. Meg Verlico, our Director, Executive Director of Student Services, responses to questions that you guys had last meeting. I won't go into great detail, but we will share these with you guys. I don't know if you just want to email to Mel to the blog or the committee, or how you want.
That, or you can put it on the meeting minutes too.
Put a meeting.
Yeah.
For the attachment.
Yeah.
For that, yeah.
You know that, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Thank you. So budget sub questions from last week around team evaluation services. So she linked within this document the rates. And then we talked about the so she has responses to the eligibility, BCBA caseloads, looking at current at an average of 30.7. So she gave in examples or information around the BCBA question. And then the last one was nursing ratios. So she worked with our health services director, Gino Hare, and compiled responses with links to the student services. So unless this, I guess this is a question I'll have to follow with Meg, but we will share this with the group through the minutes. And then if people have follow-up questions, they can certainly reach out to Meg.
Can you also send it to me too?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Thank
Yep, we'll send electronically to you. Email to Danielle. And share through minutes.
Thank you.
And then on to grants and, sorry, I'll speak up. I realized I was talking low. So everyone just speak up tonight, please. So grant update. Like grant update we have is, and I'm glad Principal Monahan is here, through the state, there's an opportunity for promoting safe and healthy learning environments. And Principal Monahan partnering with Bryn Cooper will work with our grants, my staff in my office here to apply for the grant. And I think you did.
We did. The grant is due on Friday. We submitted it this afternoon.
And just a quick blurb on what you guys are looking to do with the.
So the grant is about promoting safe and healthy learning environments. There are 6 components to the grant. We are specifically looking at what's called option E, which is bringing teen mental health first aid to the high school. So the grant would provide us the opportunity to do some training with our staff, and then be able to share out through the train the trainer training and information for parents. We would be offering this to, the grant is asking us to offer to a whole grade level, which we would do through PE. And also it would be embedded in an elective in PE it would be 10th graders that would participate in this. And then again, they could get a repeat component of it in 11th or 12th grade.
So that's in the program of studies too, right? I think it was listed in there.
Yeah, it's part of.
So will they get
course.
certified? I'll just ask now, will they get a certified to do CPR?
So that's not part of this.
That's not part of that, but is the class?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And now you're confusing my.
I'm sorry.
Program of studies.
Sorry, I was reading it earlier.
No
so
cost. Yes.
I was doing my homework, so.
Is that a DESI grant?
It is.
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Other questions we had will be next meeting. There was questions for tech around capabilities of Google. And then there was some, unless Jeremy wanted to add anything to his questions specific to some of the primaries and some curriculums they're using. So we have the elementary principals next meeting, not next week, next meeting. So we'll follow up with those questions. So I think that covers everything from last meeting. Yep, and then grants, Karen just went over. The next item, no other questions, I'll continue on. Audits and reports, I had chapter 70 on here. I was hopeful that it would have come out earlier, but my understanding is
It was later today.
the governor's budget drops later today. So I will push out that piece till next meeting. I suspect without even looking, we probably get our $30 per pupil increase. Probably they're looking to hopefully fund circuit breaker at 75%. But the other thing I want to mention that I brought up last time was Project 211, which is basically awareness around the hold harmless and the minimum aid that districts get. So 211 of the 316 districts, so 67% of districts have been getting the minimum aid. And like I said, for us, that's $30 for a student. Doesn't even touch what our level service increase is each year. So as next meeting, we'll share more in chapter 70 as we go through the process. But I had it on today, hopeful that it might have dropped yesterday or early today, but it just was this afternoon. So thank you for that.
There was no updates on gifts.
No, Betsy Harris will, I think at the February 26th meeting, we'll do the grant report, and then it'll be at the full meeting subsequently.
Questions from the committee? Moving on to contracts and procurement.
I have nothing. We're in total budget mode right now. We're in Alyssa's world of finance and procurement. She's 100% finance these days, not as much procurement. So FY26 budget, and if I could ask, so we'll do the athletics game coverage. We have AD O'Leary and HR Director Burham here, and then we'll take out of order if we could, the athletics
I was
budget.
just going to ask that. I would suggest that as well.
If you guys
Yep.
agree to that.
All right, is the committee okay with that? Taking athletics right after he presents?
So I'll kick it over to the gentleman to the table.
All right, start with the, I'll just give an overview, just kind of how I got involved in the process. Then you can fill in some of the pieces, but just coming from an HR lens and coming into this position, talking to Rob and working with athletics, there was some things that we just wanted to kind of streamline and tighten up a little bit to make sure that we have good procedures, that we're keeping staff, students safe, keeping families informed, and also making sure that the employment in hiring and appointing and all those things, that process is done smoothly and appropriately. So we've been over the last few months just kind of looking at some different ways that we could make sure that this is happening. So that's what we're going to kind of walk through is one of the things is the game worker pay rates and the procedures that are involved with bringing on people who, we can explain the game work for anyone that doesn't know. It's any game that takes place. Who are the people that are needed in terms of staffing to make sure that that environment is supported and secure and all of that. So we talked a little bit about that. How do we find the individuals to do those, to fill those positions? And then where are we kind of documenting this so that we know who's working in any particular game in case there's changes that need to take place, et cetera. So that's one thing we were working on. The other thing that we're doing as well is when I talk about the safety and security, I guess, is we want to make sure anybody who's working on sidelines, working with our students is has the appropriate background checks, if they've got the appropriate certifications. So Rob kind of oversees that certification side in terms of things like concussion protocols, even though that the coaches take care of that themselves. And then from my standpoint, we're looking at the Corey, Sori, fingerprinting, making sure that everybody has those procedures, that we've done those appropriate background checks to, so that they can be in those positions. And then the last thing we kind of do, which isn't really on here, is we've also, as part of safety and appropriate communication, as we've set up email groups that are in the process of setting up email groups that are sports specific, so we can tell you a little bit about that. So there's the football, we'll use that one, that's the biggest sport. So we're going to have a football varsity, actually just football in general, with all that. It's a kind of like we have the human resources at weymouthschools.org. We're going to have football at weymouthschools.org, et cetera. if that's-
Just for football, or would that be?
No, every sport, just as an example. And then we'll have the people who need to know that information. So if you had a question about your child in a particular sport, you go right to that. Cuts out any kind of private emails, texting, things that could get people into a situation that we don't want to be in. And it also gives us a record of any correspondence. So that's kind of an overview of a few things and step into.
Can I, was this document added to any job description for your postings? No,
This document,
the
procedures.
procedure for hiring game workers, because it seems like that kind of would be something that would be in a job description as well.
Not in a job description, but it's, in terms of job descriptions, I have to look back and see what we have for job descriptions.
For the actual positions,
Yeah,
I'm
Oh.
not sure we have an actual.
so we don't have actual positions for game workers.
We do. We have clock, we have
Crowd control.
crowd control, and we have ticket takers, and we have game admin. If if there's 4 games going on, we need to pay someone to do it.
So I guess my question would be, how would they know that they were supposed to do this if it wasn't in their job description? You know what I mean? How would you
Oh,
hold
this
them?
is actually this is how we hire them.
Okay,
This is
This
Okay,
is-
that-
this is
that
how-
would-
Yeah, this is how
okay,
we're gonna start hiring for those positions.
okay.
That were, before my time, were not posted. They were just kind of emailed out. We've been following that process, and now we're gonna post them
Okay.
each season, so we can get more applicants. We did it for the winter.
Yeah, they just
We
posted
got
in the
about 10
hiring thing, yeah.
applicants, so far, some of them have already started working.
Okay.
We're always looking for extra people, so it's gonna be an ongoing onboarding. Trying to get as many people as we can to help.
Sorry to interrupt.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
For the email groups, who's going to monitor the emails? Are you going to, or is there going to be a specific person? And will they be collaborative? So can a parent ask a question, will all the parents see it? Or is it just going to be like directed?
So the first step when we started with this is if you had a specific question for a coach,
Okay,
instead of emailing the coach at his Yahoo account,
okay,
you're gonna be emailing him at a school account, him or her at a school account. That I will be on that email as a group. Email will be myself and any coach that's in that program. The second part of this, which I had a meeting on Friday, a lot of school districts are going to like certain groups, like if your kid played a sport before, it used to be team staff,
Mhm.
where you can correspond. It's not a text message, but Google has one now. So Brett and I have kind of started to go down the path of what that would look like. So it's basically a Google chat that would have the parents on. So if you wanted to ask a question for all the parents.
right. So say a field change or something like that, is that where
That's where this
it would go? Okay,
We do have some of that right now with Arbiter.
Mhm.
But only if you follow, like if you're a soccer parent and you follow that soccer team, you get it. But if you're not following the team and you just wanted to go to the game, you wouldn't see it.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. Everybody good? Go ahead.
So for the procedure and for the proposed stipends, did we work with WEA on this?
For this, no, because it's not, they're not union stipends. This is really open to anybody, so
Okay, so we could even hire like Grandpa Joe from down the road.
we could, yeah. I mean, we certainly look internally first. Whether or not this is something that may go into a contract at some time, I mean, that's down the road in negotiations, if that's something they want to bring up. But at this particular time, really, anybody can be hired for that position, but it tends to be filled internally by our staff.
Okay, and how many separate, so I guess, let me rephrase that. It could be a complicated question. Can the same person get more than one stipend for one game? So can somebody take tickets and run a clock? Or is it just one stipend per one person per game?
We have been, especially in football, when we're shorthanded, we could have a ticket taker who takes tickets till halftime.
Yeah.
And then stays and does crowd control. So, but they wouldn't get the full crowd control stipend. They would only get, they'd get the ticket taker stipend because they work till halftime, and they'd get half of the crowd control stipend if we're shorthanded on any given night. The goal right now is to make enough people in the pool that we won't be shorthanded. Friday nights are tough, Saturday nights are tough, to get people to work. But we haven't, there has never been a time when someone's getting two stipends to do the same job at the same time.
Okay.
Or at least since I've been,
Who manages that? Do you?
yes.
So how would you know, like, if it was happening?
We have a Google sheet
Okay.
that we sign them up on. And so if you're working clock, you're in the clock column, you couldn't be in the clock column and the ticket taker column at the same time.
What if somebody doesn't show up? I'm sure.
We punt and someone has to jump in and fill in. Usually that doesn't happen. We have a pretty dedicated staff. Honestly, when it happens, it's usually someone thought the baseball game was at Libby and it was at the high school, something like that, or soccer game was at Lovell instead of at Legion. Something to that effect is usually what happens. And they usually get there momentarily, however it takes them to get across the city. But we haven't had a lot of that. I mean, right now, there's a lot of people who are sick.
I was gonna say, knock on wood.
We've just been, I think we're on our third ticket taker today because it's game because two other people are sick.
Yeah.
So we, managing it can be tough, but between myself and my secretary, we get it done.
And sort of that, just that, Rob does, so there's a site admin, whether it's Rob or a site admin designated. So there's kind of your control of making sure that
Somebody's there.
people who are assigned are showing up in there.
Yeah.
That site admin person, whoever that is, would
And
manage that.
sorry, Brian, I just thought this, the second step of that is they turn time cards in.
Okay.
So when their time card's turned into Terry in the main office, the time card can only have one position on it.
Go ahead, Tracy.
So where it says the rates and stuff, so is that per game?
The one on the left is rates, yeah. So if we hire somebody for that position, that's what we pay them.
And,
But we don't, sorry, Teresa, we don't
Right.
always, like, for site admin for football, we're not paying a site admin because either myself or Ms. Monahan are 99.9% of the time there. But if we had to hire someone for football, that would be the price. And these prices have not changed over the last probably 7 or 8 years.
In the per competition, not per hour, right?
Yeah, some of them, if you look at basketball, it says like 3 games. If you go down a little, right?
Yep.
Like basketball clock 3 games to get, that's the rate for all 3 games.
Right. It's not
Not 100.
from tip off till, the whistle blows at the end. The idea is that they're there for the whole event or events.
oh, okay. So there's 3 games on that day.
Yeah, so they play freshman, JV, and varsity.
Gotcha.
So they're there for all
Okay.
3. If they're there for
Okay.
2, they get the one that says 2 games. If they're there for 1, they get what we pay them.
So my other question would be, if that's okay, the age, like, can you hire an 18-year-old, a senior, or do any of these? Is there any age restriction?
It's an interesting question. No, we haven't had that come up. I would say for clock, like if it's someone who's knowledgeable, let's say a kid who graduated last year might be around or something that would want to do the clock.
Back in my day, Weymouth North, we did it.
Yeah,
We did it.
the MIA
We all
got
did it. We
away
didn't
with
get paid.
No,
The MIA got away from that probably about 15 years ago when abusive officials became a hot button topic. And there were kids doing clocks and getting yelled at from parents, because the clock was running.
That would be me.
Yeah,
I'd be yelled at.
but I haven't.
I'm just
seen-
curious that,
I mean, maybe
I mean, you have to pass a query and a sorry, so.
Where they're doing that. It's, mostly adults. And some people have outsourced it to companies. There's companies out there now that'll.
You can't do a query under 18, right?
Right.
So
No, it's under 17.
is it 17? Okay.
Yeah, I was just curious that I know that this might be a nice little
Side
part-time job for someone that's either going to go to school for, some sort of.
I mean, I'd be interested to talk about that. I don't think there's any crowd control might be tough. In the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like ticket taking, but
And doing the clock.
the clock isn't that
No, I mean, that would be the
Challenging.
one that we could probably use.
just as a backup, especially if people are getting sick, if you have seniors that were
Yep.
going to be at the game
Sport management.
They do it in
anyways.
wrestling
Sport management,
because
yeah.
there's so many
Yeah.
different rules and.
Assignments for.
Mhm.
So this sheet's helpful because this kind of sets the stage. It tells you what positions are needed for which sport. Then that allows us to post the positions, set the appointments, and that's up to, up to Mr. O'Leary in terms of how he wants to, if he wants to hire somebody for all games, if he wants to, however he wants that process to work. Maybe there's some substitutes in the mix as well. But we will work with him on that process, make sure that those appointments are sent out. And then from there, there's this, as he had mentioned, there's a game worker sheet that has every game and who's working that so that it can be monitored.
Yeah.
We know who the site admin is, we know who the clock person is, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think my follow-up to that would be just making sure it's equitable across the board so that, one person doesn't always get a game over somebody that hasn't gotten a chance to, like, we don't have one person hogging all the extra hours. I know you say that we're short, but, we've seen it before that someone's gotten every single game that they've wanted and others that I put my name in for it, I didn't get picked.
So
And so,
Danielle, just to that, so this was discussed, Rebecca had asked the question. It did come from joint labor management, just around making sure that we're posting things and there's equity around the appointments of.
great.
There
thank
is
you.
also knowledge of certain games that you would have to have in order to be one of the workers. So you really would need
For
to know,
instance?
a scorer.
Would have to know how to do the job.
Do,
Probably the
well,
toughest job.
know the game and do the job,
Gotcha.
so there are some that would have some training to go along with them, but having a knowledge of that sport is also
Gotcha.
helpful.
I know I went to a couple of basketball and I went to a wrestling and I'd never been to one before because my kids didn't play it and I certainly didn't do wrestling. But I know everything about hockey, but I was really like, I didn't realize how much running went on in basketball. I know, I don't watch it on TV, I don't watch it, and I was like, oh my God, they do a lot of running.
And the 30-second clock is
Yeah.
somewhat new,
It's-
so
yes,
it's not something a lot of us played with when you played basketball when you were younger.
Yeah,
So-
so
Every time it's.
I get the knowledge is important.
Yeah, and I do think the other piece with the crowd control, it's the high school students. So we're really looking for
Someone
staff
can
that
manage
are
it.
familiar with the high school students,
Mhm.
because that's helpful as well.
And it depends on who they're playing, on how rowdy
And
can
where we
can
are.
go. Yeah,
The rink is different than.
Right.
you know,
yeah. I think that was just in the news last week.
Yes.
I was on that.
Not us. It wasn't us. It wasn't us.
On that
The
same note,
basketball
I was
games,
just
football.
thinking about like our high profile games. And maybe it would be helpful to the committee to know what admins are assigned to those games in case something does happen. We just know who to contact if we have questions about what's going on, obviously.
And I think there was a situation that no one knew who, there was a,
Who's there? If we had parents
An
reaching out
emergency
to us, if
situation.
there was an emergency situation, we could just say, this is the site admin, find this person. I think that would be helpful for the
Yep.
committee. Even just
Wearing a
games we
color
know.
shirt or something.
yeah,
games that we know this.
so we're not
probably-
doing Real Waldo to find the right person to
Or like a
contact.
medical issue.
Right, I agree.
I think that would be helpful for the committee.
So we do have a separate sheet right now that we're managing for athletic trainers because we don't have a full-time athletic trainer right now. So that sheet is ever-changing, I would say, but we've been lucky enough to have Ms. Shanley at the high school who's been recertified. So she's been really helping me fill a lot of those games with other athletic trainers, which we've been lucky this current winter. We haven't had too many EMTs, which in the past we've had a lot of EMT coverage, which it's not the same coverage that you get from an athletic trainer. If an EMT's at a game and someone gets hurt and they're seen by an EMT, if it's a head injury, they cannot go back into a game. And if it's something that the EMT has to treat, they cannot return to the game. An athletic trainer can treat and return. So it's a different level of service, but it's thank God we have Lauren right now to help because she's been huge.
When does the EMT come and not come?
When we can't find an athletic
That's
trainer, we
okay,
find
yeah,
an EMT. We do have a service, I think it's
Social health.
Yeah, the social health. They actually give us an EMT when needed at no charge.
Oh.
So it's if they're available.
Sure.
So that's a big help to us as well. We haven't had to use them as often as we have in the past. Because,
Do we know the cost if they did charge us, what that would range?
so an EMT is anywhere from 40 an hour to 60 an hour,
Is it
depending.
their hourly rate or is it like a bill rate?
It depends on if it's
Trainer.
if it comes from the firefighters union or because if a firefighter comes and works, it's a set
Yep.
rate.
Yep.
If it's an ambulance EMT, it's another rate. So it's ballpark.
Can I have a follow-up? But an athletic trainer wouldn't ever also be the site admin, right?
No.
Okay.
They might be the one, like at a JV hockey game, they may be the person who's there. But they'd be a clock person also. There'd be another adult there. They wouldn't be the only adult there.
So, yeah, it's just my concern is if we only have per diem or part-time athletic trainers right now, I don't think it's fair to ask them to also represent
No,
the
they
district
would
as
never be
admins.
representing us as an admin. They might be the one that's treating the person, making a phone call. If I'm there, someone gets hurt, I might be the one who calls the dad them off. In this case, they would be the one who calls the dad them off. And then we would follow up with them afterward, depending on the sport and what what else was going on in the building.
So no matter what, there's always a site admin in addition to some kind of healthcare person.
Yes, there's always another adult, whether that's the clock/light admin, because at JV hockey, it might be, if there's not a site admin, the clock person might be the site admin. Depending on the day, it's a 4:00 game on a Friday afternoon, we have basketball going on.
But they're getting paid for one stipend.
Yes,
Can I just ask one more? Well, I think I answered this, but I just want a clarification. So for hockey, there's site admin per game, $50, and then clock 75. But for JV, it's one person at site admin and clock?
yeah,
For
if they're the
75?
site admin and the clock person, it would
So
be
it's just-
75. If they're the clock person, it would be 50. If they're there by themselves, it would be $75.
For just the JV games?
Just a JV, it's 1 hour JV game.
Okay.
And this rate sheet is what we brought back. So these rates existed prior to us bringing it to budget sub. So we now bring the rate sheet to you, but we also, the reason we brought this originally was to add that athletic trainer rate, which then spurred conversation around the procedures, which that's what Rob and Jeremy had worked on to bring tonight as well.
Daniel, can I ask a question? Go ahead. Brian, is the AT per diem rate, is that something that we vote on?
So I think this whole rate sheet, it's similar to ESY rates and stuff,
Yeah.
right? So I think you would.
Is it, just specifically to the athletic trainer per diem rate that I think if it were a little higher, we would catch some more fish in the net.
If we're getting invoiced, the average is $60 an hour.
Yeah, and I just don't, we don't have, I don't think, how do I say this? I think raising it wouldn't hurt a lot financially, because I'm not the one who has to balance the books, but
Yeah.
I think going without an athletic trainer is more of a liability than paying people more.
Right.
Legally, a lot of sports you can't go.
Yeah, they're coming.
You have to either get an EMT, an athletic.
Well,
trainer.
but you know what I mean? I think we need to pay
No,
more.
I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
Yeah. So I would, whenever this comes to a vote, not tonight, right?
No, we'll bring it back. My thought is we would bring it back when we do all of the, like we would do this, the sub rates.
One happy family of.
Yeah, exactly. But we can bring it back, and if Rob thinks he can fit it within his budget to do $60 per hour, then we will make that change.
I would not be averse to that suggestion.
I'm so ignorant to sports whatsoever. Can you just tell me what type of qualifications an athletic trainer would have?
Oh, there's
It's a lot.
some, yeah. There's a state license,
Doctor.
there's a
Okay.
national license, there's a master's degree. There's obviously.
Hours.
Pretty
Yeah. there's
significant amount.
Hours.
Professional development.
Physical therapist.
There you go.
Okay.
Go to school for a
It's,
long time.
There's a lot.
Just thinking about the rate, and I don't know what they're doing. So.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
They also, if they're doing per diem work, they're paying their own insurance outside.
Yep. Usually a per diem rate is
It might
higher.
be wise to have like some sort of comparison
I can get it.
of where everybody else is doing because
And other structures, like how they're structured organization wise, what that looks like. Any other questions from the committee? Do you want to roll into your?
nice.
Or not?
So while they're getting prepared there, we'll look at that $60 rate, and then when we come back, I think it's in March sometime over maybe. We'll bring back all of those rate sheets, the ESY rate, the sub rate, and then this athletic game coverage rate. Yep.
is the daycare rate in that too?
Childcare.
Oh, excuse me, sorry.
Yes, it is, and the evening school rate is in there. All the
Yeah.
miscellaneous rates are in that.
Yeah,
Childcare.
fee,
Childcare.
we call it like the fee cycle review. Yep.
It's March 5th.
Thank you. So I'll just kind of kick off the groups here for high school, CT, athletics, and Chapman. Athletics going to go first. As we talked about, we're going through all of our cost center public hearings for schools and departments. Budget goal this year was level service staffing, level funded expenses, and then prioritizing needs through budget neutral shifting of resources, which that we'll get into we're going to show the needs list tonight. We started to populate it with the groups that are here tonight, and we'll have the full list next meeting. But it's really in looking at building a level service budget. How can we shift resources within our level service budget to address needs that have been prioritized through this process?
Thank you.
So with that, I will turn it over to the athletic director again.
All right. So, on the.
I'm gonna need glasses.
One back, I think.
Which one? You want to do your expense lines, or you just going to jump right into your?
Jump right into it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Basically, expenses from his operating budget has level funded expenses. So it's the same bottom line expenses within the operating budget. 115, if I can get to it here.
135.
115.
Nope, 115, right?
115, 135.
Yeah, I thought someone said 115 and said someone said no, 115, 135.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the increases in expenses for next year would be into the admin salaries, which is AD, secretary, athletic trainer, for the COLA. So we'd go from 239,979 to 245,978.48.
I didn't see this.
I know, I don't do those.
Yeah, it's not on.
It's not in the packet. Yeah.
So
I have it.
where athletics is, we can include this, but where athletics, so we're reviewing the operating budgets. Rob's operating expense lines, non-staff, is going to be level funded. We'll get into any additional staffing requests. But as is the case with athletics each year, is the operating budget, is the cost to run athletics, period. Whatever cost to run athletics, all the programs. And then there's the operating budget. And then there's the revolving fund that collects fees and gate fees and user fees. The combination of our operating budget and all those revenues is what funds athletics. So we can also add to the minutes, because part of Rob's presentation tonight is presenting kind of that balancing of what it costs to run athletics in total and how we fund it, which that's what Rob's going to talk through now. But this document here, we can get into.
Okay, so the admin salaries are increased due to
COLAs, and then we have to finalize steps as well. So it'll be roughly that number. And then the high school stipends are what the contractual stipends are in the Unit A contract. And Rob will take those rates and he'll identify what he needs for coaches next year and comes up with that next number.
That's the 395, 742, 25.
And then expenses here are part of his operating request. But I think what we should focus on is kind of that, what is the total cost to run athletics? And we can look at the lines and how does this get funded? That's really what Rob is going to talk through tonight. So you want me to scroll down to?
Yep, the bottom line number. So in the middle of that, to the middle school, Principal Dolan and I met last week, and we spend a lot of time on buses and traveling distances that we probably don't need to travel at middle school right now. So we're proposing redesigning our middle school competitive athletic budget. I can share this sheet too if you want.
I think it would have been helpful to have
Yeah.
beforehand.
So the idea is to run one competitive sport a season for middle school sports. And that would include coaches' stipends, transportation, supplies and equipment. And the bottom line number to run that program would be 34,544, the number on the right there.
So you're decreasing the sports at Chapman.
Well, the competitive sports at Chapman, however, we're gonna run a full intramural program, which will have more students involved. We go from having about 50 kids involved in volleyball to having over 150 kids involved in volleyball. Running it in-house, instead of having 4 teams, we could have 8 teams, upwards of 10 teams, depending on the number of kids who are interested in the fall. We would still keep competitive cross-country, where we have 50 to 75 kids running per year. In the winter, we would run a competitive basketball, but we would still have unified basketball, and we would still have wrestling as a intramural sport, so that we would have more kids involved, because of the transportation, we can only fit 50 on a bus. So we're limiting our number of student athletes that we can have involved. We're cutting kids at the middle school.
So we have the interest.
We have the interest for the more kids to be
So
involved.
how do we justify cutting it if we have the interest?
Because we can only have, like in volleyball, we can only have 2 teams. Maroon and the gold. So right now for competitive. So instead of competitive volleyball, we will
I
have.
feel like there's a better
So,
option.
so I feel like, I don't know so we're not going to travel
Correct.
anymore. It's going to be in-house, so it's going to be,
Well, we're not going to travel in some sports. In others, in sports that we've been traveling in, like cross-country, we travel to Hingham, we travel to Rockland, we travel to Pembroke this fall.
but you're not going to Framingham
Right.
anymore. You're not going to,
Right.
okay.
We're gonna bring it closer to home to save money on transportation.
So would they still compete against local towns, or are they just competing against
The intramurals,
their own
They're all-
pairs.
they're all-
the intramurals would just be in-house. It would be, so,
So when you say in-house, I mean
yeah, against.
Team A against Team B,
Yeah,
all go to the same school.
yeah. And more kids involved than what we have right now.
I would argue that more kids might not be involved because they do like the competitive piece of it, of being, I feel like we could have looked at better options of staying locally versus completely eliminating.
Well, the hard part about staying locally is you have to belong into a league. And the only league right now that we can play middle school sports in is the Bay State League, which involves Natick and,
Which wise we go to Walpole for
right, so.
football. Right. That's why we go to Walpole for football instead of Hingham.
Yes,
So I have a, can I?
Go ahead.
So I'm not, I have not been shown any data for many years, including this one about, that would tell me why we're trying to save money on transportation right now. So from your justification, you're trying to solve a problem.
not just transportation, it's also paying coaches that we pay, that we won't have to pay now. That
So I hear you, and I respect what you're saying, but I have not been shown any evidence to back up the justification that you're giving us.
I also, how did you equitably choose which sports you go forward with competitively versus not?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
So part of this is that we don't have the town funding that we had for a couple of years. And so we were looking at different models for middle school. I think when we looked at it, Chapman's a unicorn a little bit because we're such a big school. And our neighboring districts have such small programs. Like Hanover doesn't have competitive sports in a lot of seasons. We don't have those neighborhood places to be playing competitive sports. And we do have a tremendous amount of students that are interested in intramural. We had 100 kids do volleyball. We did 2 intramural sessions of volleyball. So we have 2 groups of 100 kids doing volleyball rather than our competitive volleyball. We have to limit the space because we are transporting them. So I think we were looking creatively because we started with a user fee model like the high school has, and that's just super unrealistic in middle school to pay a user fee. It's just not equitable. It's not, I struggle with Chromebook fees in middle school. So how do we get that funding that the town has been paying for the last couple of years since New Chapman opened without a user fee, but creating all of the opportunities that we know our middle school kids want and need. So I think we were trying to be creative with kind of a hybrid model for next year to see how we do without user fees and if we can float it. I think we prioritize boys and girls cross country because of the relationship Andrea Hicks has with neighboring towns. She kind of organically put that together, playing the teams that we played. Boys and girls basketball would be the winter sport, and boys and girls track would be the spring sport, just because capacity is a little easier, that we can have more kids.
and basketball is.
I think
So that's some background information.
Just to Rebecca's point, I think that would have been helpful to have some data to compare it to.
So I think for me to consider this further, I need to see the actual data that you're talking about.
Protocol.
So, yeah, sport by sport breakdown, number of participants,
Yep.
transportation costs. I'd love to see where we travel to. Just cost by team even, because we're kind of going into this blind right now. And I don't know how we would even ethically make a decision about this.
At the end of last year, in the June presentation, we talked middle school.
Yeah, but we need to talk about this year too.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just what we spent in middle school sports and how we spent the money on middle school sports, where we spent the money on middle school sports in some of that budgeted line items.
And again, I'm new to Chapman, and so I think there's been different models over time in middle school as well. And so we want competitive sports, but is it sustainable? And where is the cost coming from? I think we're,
Part of the proposal that they're bringing forward is this would have no middle school fee associated.
So yes, and I will never advocate for fees. And I want to make sure Gus hears that. I'm never going to advocate for fees.
I'm gonna not.
However, I do feel like this is a problem that I think we need to look at the data on.
Yep.
And I think I'd love to have well, number one, I do appreciate you coming here with an idea for creative problem solving. I would like to be able to explore a bigger discussion about this, which is why I'm happy that we have the athletic subcommittee now.
Yep.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking about is it the parent councils or the whatever, all the fundraising avenues that we have out of Chapman, and folks who are actually really, really good at
Yep.
raising money. And I'm wondering what ideas can come from that in terms of how we can keep a little bit more of our competitive team. Because I do have a concern about the current plan. I do think keeping maybe a higher number of our competitive teams is beneficial for a lot of our students. We are aware that some of our Chapman youngsters are maybe in need of some more direction after school.
Yeah.
And I think so creating more direction and competition, because I think the adolescent brain appreciates the competition, is a more sound direction that we should be looking at, and maybe not giving up on it altogether just yet.
I think I would love to come with multiple models. I think we kind of struggled because I even a 20, we like played with a $25 fee. Like some schools have $20 fees just for clubs, right? Like, do we do a blanket $25? But then it's still like the long-term sustainability. We have great parent councils and support groups, but what's the sustainability and long-term of that? I don't want to have to be recreating proposals every year because somebody's moving on to the high school, you know what I mean? And so I think this is just like a little uncharted territory, and
100%.
I would love to have feedback. And I think kids love competitive sports, but I also think they just love being active. So I think that there can be a middle ground, and I'd be happy.
And we were trying to live within what we already have.
Our budget, yeah.
budgeted For middle school sports.
Can you tell us what that number is?
It's the 34,555, my eyes are going, 34,544.
Which is one competitive sport.
Is that-
No, I think that's your
What have we
proposal.
been given by the town?
So we've been getting 60,000 a year for 3 years, and
That was ARPA.
correct.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
No.
it's good. And the current middle school competitive sports program, as it stands, projected for next year's cost, I think that was going to be 75,000 roughly, right? So it's like we've had 60,000 year funding, but with the increase in costs of whatever, the stipends, transportation, I think you were coming in at like roughly 75. That's the last I remember conversations, around 75,000. I think your proposed model is this number, correct?
That's correct.
But to your point, Rebecca, I think just kind of framing everything for some of the people that aren't aware. So receiving $60,000 from the town for the last 3 years through ARPA, projected potentially to be $75,000 given transportation costs, coaching and all of that. Now we're charged with that dilemma of not receiving $60,000 a year. So I think, Rob and Jenny working together, I think that is a thought process. And I want everybody to kind of hear this at the table is we completely understand the value of our middle school students being after school, engaging in athletics. We do not want to charge fees. That is something we really don't want to entertain. So, I thank Jenny and Rob for looking at this. I will make sure they have kind of more information, kind of outlining the options. But I do want to be clear that there's no one here that wants to charge for middle school athletics. So we're trying to do the very best that we can to keep ourselves within the budget, providing after school athletics, providing competition. If we can find competition a little bit closer to home to save us transportation costs and sometimes intramurals as well. You're playing team A versus team B, but you might not be paying a referee. The referee costs are all increasing as well. So it might be the coach that's reffing a little bit for the game. So again, we know it's not the perfect plan, but we have to find something within our budget. So I think that is something that we'll be talking about in the future as well.
So I definitely think we need the data. Because I'm saying to myself, exactly what you said, why are we looking to cut it? knowing now that that money is no longer going to be there. That makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, because that's not projected here, it's not said here, it hasn't been said at the table until it's just brought up. So having the data of what last year looked like, what this year looks like, the cost of the transportation. I like the idea. I'm not a competitive person, I don't think anyways, in sports mind. I like the fact that we could double the opportunity for more kids to be able to play a sport. I get, hey, it'd be nice to get on a bus and go play against another school, but I'm not against having 200 kids get to play a sport as opposed to 50 because we only have one bus. But to look at that data and show that, like, this is what it's cost. Hey, this was the money we got. We're no longer getting that money. So this is the cost of still running it, but we need to come up with, $30,000 more to run it. I just think that we're missing a big piece of the puzzle here to make a decision. And I do think that having these solutions come to the athletic subcommittee and being able to hash out and then coming here with like, this is a solid plan. I also think that your expertise in data and your background in athletics and everything is very helpful to, us that aren't on that. So you're asking all the right questions. The data needs to support why we're cutting. Not knowing that we're getting that kind of money still as of last year or this year makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference.
I'd also, and I don't know if this is from you guys or if this could be through the subcommittee, I'd like to see from families that they would still have interest if it was an intramural sport. Because I assume there would be some that would not be interested in an intramural sport and would probably go to like a JBL or an
At a cost.
Which they
at a
don't.
cost.
Yeah, they still could probably do both because JBL's later on it.
Right.
So a lot of them are probably going to take that opportunity.
I think the no cost and more opportunity, I think it brings it back to the 1970s.
There is
and 80s.
competition. It's just pure
You
competition.
wouldn't remember.
I know you probably have more to present on, so I guess just to move the conversation towards towards a stopping point, if we could just get data on
The
actuals,
actual.
that paint a picture of how are we arriving at a shortfall and what is the shortfall. That would be super helpful. And Jenny, I love I'm sorry if this creates more work for you, but I love the idea of having maybe like three options of, we know what options 1 and 3 would be. Option 1 would be there's no change and we just operate in a deficit, and then Brian would not have a good day.
Someone's not going to.
Option 3 would be what we're presenting, which is just everybody goes intramural. And I love an option maybe 2 and 2.5 of what could a little bit more creativity look like, and maybe that would require more collaboration with parent groups and stuff. I just love to be able to have that kind of conversation before we kind of sundown something that I think we were really excited about when Chapman opened.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think we owe it to the kids too.
I agree.
So as we continue through this, February 26th is the next time we come back here with like our budget proposal with all of the cost centers put together. I know there is a subcommittee for athletics coming up too. What I wanted to do here is take that middle school conversation that, where Rob left off here of the 35,000 that says proposed, to keep going. What we've been doing is 75,000. So I just want to now draw your attention down to the funding. So $1 million, roughly 1.1 million is what Rob proposed athletics, middle school and high school would cost and under this proposed plan. And then Rob, if you could talk through kind of the revenues to support, and then we can get to that bottom line number.
Yeah, so user fees, we are projected to take in $230,000. Gate, we are projected to take in $60,000. So the projections for gate do include the Chesna donation from this past year. So the that would bring us to $290,000 in. And then the operating and the two operating budget staff and operating budget expenses would bring us to 1,022,948.94. The number that we've left off there is the MIA number, because that number is not a consistent source of funding, but it is funding that we take in when we host playoff games, and we've already hosted 4 this past fall, projected to get a couple of basketball games, and we will get lacrosse as well. So that number isn't going to be budgeted into next year because we don't know what that number is yet. So with that said, we would have a shortfall of 56,136.79, and that is to run middle school as, and I know we're going to talk about, but that is to run middle school as the way that
Is proposed.
tonight, and high school. So
And as middle school sports exists now, projected, that number would be closer to $100,000
Yes.
in the red.
Wait, this is 56 is middle school and high school
Yeah.
together.
together,
Correct. So
as we proposed the
With
34,000.
Yeah, half and half, yeah.
slash, competitive budget.
So if I could just, I feel like each year with athletics, it's different than our other cost centers where it's just the operating budget we're talking about. We're also talking about the revolving fund that supports because of user fees. So it is, high school, middle school sports competitive as the plan as brought forward for next year, which is different than what at the middle school is this year. That's 1.1 million, right? That's the cost. The funding of that is, as Rob mentioned, user fees of 230,000, which we've talked about the last couple of years. This is a change in a projection, which I had to really understand, but I think it's the work Karen and Rob are doing with the collection and the waiver system that, if you remember, we had knocked down, this was historically a $250,000 number. We knocked it down a couple of years ago to 175,000. And so they're proposing putting it back at 230 because that's what they say they're seeing in collection now, which is great. Gate, that's the gate fee. And whether it's the Chesney gift this year or people paying the gate fee, that's what he projects. MIA, those are those additional tournament games, which it's not our teams competing. We're just the host site. So it really covers the people to run the site. We get a little more. So as you can see here, so
the 16 is from last year?
16's last year, but that's like what we received, right, Rob? That doesn't include the cost of the staff who ran those games, which is less than that.
Well, but the staff number is in the staffing of the game workers and all that. Like the number that we spent is in that number. We've taken 16 in to offset what we spent as well.
So if
So we
you,
might take 16 in, we might have spent 7 of that. So we made 9. But that number is in what we've already, so if you worked a game.
so if you had to guess, we could guess at 16 for
No,
this
that's what
year?
we actually, that's the check we got from the MIA. The totals of the checks were 16,787.47.
But we had costs associated
Correct.
that check covered that.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's not a net number, right? And then as we talk about the operating ask, which again, we'll see on February 26th, is the staffing of 617, which is administration and coaches, and then the operating budget expenses. So that brings you $1 million. So the shortfall right now is 56,000, again, as middle school being proposed tonight. If it's what it's been, that's more like a $75,000 cost. So this number goes from 56,000 to 100,000. So what Rob is going to talk through now is how would you address the 56,000 shortfall? And then if it's 100,000, that's the conversation for next time.
Can I ask one question before you go on? Is the 32 from last year a shortfall or was that over?
That, my guess is, Rob, is that, that's a good question. I don't know if that's.
Because if you take that number and the MIA number, that's pretty similar.
So I'm not sure where that number is coming from, if Karen or.
I mean, it is the same. It's taking the total expenses, the difference between the total expenses and
taken in.
total revenue.
That's current year.
That's current.
That's this year?
That's
That's,
24, 25.
So that's the shortfall for
You're
24.
projecting a
Well,
fund balance positive at the end of the year.
Positive.
So that's
Positive, so it's not shortfall. So can that get rolled over into the shortfall? We're
Right.
Fine.
If,
Revolving fund, it does.
But it.
I know how math works, Karen.
So again, that
It
number.
doesn't work like that.
Can't count the MIAs if you don't have
Yeah.
that.
We've estimated spring in there. If we have, and even winter, we never estimate more than the regular season.
Yeah.
We can anticipate,
So this is today.
but
Trying to make the
it's, yeah, so it's really hard to come to that
I'll throw a
number.
caveat out there too, that we've supplemented,
Yeah.
we've had increased transportation costs last couple of years from the pandemic. We have supplemented that revolving fund.
Yeah.
So that revolving fund has been break even at best, and we're trying to build it up so that way, if something comes up, if Rob needs another coach during the year, or like if something happens, you need equipment or uniform, like you have that revolving fund. So I don't know. I think that to me, this is your your current year projection, how you're going to end the year. Still too early to tell that that's going to be a fund balance to carry over next year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think we focus conservatively, we focus on the 56,000 or the 100,000, depending on which model we go with.
so for the $56,000 shortfall, there's a couple of choices. We find the 56,000 somehow.
Brian finds it.
We ask for it as an operating.
We ask for it. Or we get creative and increase, sorry, Gus, I know you're sitting behind me. Boys and girls hockey, that would be 80, so increase the boys and girls hockey user fee by $50 and increase the other every other sport by $25. That would be 80 boys and girls hockey players by $50 would be 4,000, and 1,170. So we have on average 1,250 roster spots a school year. So 1,170 by $25 for the 29,250. And then we had a retirement in the dungeon. So that would be not hiring somebody to run the dungeon and have the coaches running the dungeon, which we are doing this winter, and it's working. We have more kids working out because there's just different times. We can do before school, we can do after school, we can do after practices. So we wouldn't fill fall, winter, spring in one summer position. We would still have one summer position to open the dungeon in the mornings for the summer. So we wouldn't be losing the dungeon summer program. And that stipend would total $20,000. So that would give us the 5250 to cut into the 56,136.
Just a quick question. This is about the dungeon. So, but we are only having people who are qualified to do
That's correct.
Olympic lifting and strength and conditioning.
Strength and conditioning, yes. Yeah. We don't do any Olympic lifting anymore. It's just.
I just want to be clear.
Just strength and
All
conditioning.
right, because
Yes.
that's a huge liability. Okay.
And so the proposals that Rob just outlined is, so basically, whatever it costs to run athletics, whether the shortfall is, you either increase the operating ask, you increase the user fees, or you cut. And that's where we're at right now in the conversation.
So increase hockey. Most the sports, the students provide their own equipment, except for football. They get their pads, their helmet, right? And their uniform.
That's great.
But all the other sports, including hockey, the student has to have all that equipment. They get what? A uniform and the pucks?
Yeah, the big cost is the ice, the rentals.
Right.
But we spend about $50,000 a year, and between $50,000 and $52,000 a year in rentals. So I have comparisons of some neighboring towns of what they've gone to because of the ice rentals that have gone up. Braintree's paying $900 for ice hockey.
Per kid?
per kid. Wellesley's paying 300. Natick's paying 400. This is really small. Medway's paying 550. Hopkinton's paying 445.
Do we know what like Quincy, Rockland?
I have Quincy.
Abington.
Quincy's user fees are low. They're $100 per sport. Football is 150 and hockey is 300.
They have a couple rinks in town. That could be why.
Yeah. Milton is 200 per sport, hockey and swimming at 350. So,
And I think just, sorry to interrupt you, but the one that jumped out at me was that Braintree.
yeah, Braintree.
If I had to guess-
412 per student,
It's, sorry,
412 per student per sport.
Yep.
And it's 956 for varsity ice hockey and 375 for junior varsity ice
Braintree.
hockey.
I suspect that's a function of their budget overall that they're going through. I think through significant budget cuts.
Yep.
They really increased the user fees for everything.
What's our hockey fee currently?
400,
And what's our football?
250, and everything else is 200.
So 400, get your own equipment, 250, but we'll give you all the equipment.
But
How many
the
kids,
rental,
how many kids play hockey as opposed to how many kids?
Field versus the ice.
yeah.
I get that. Yeah, trust me, I have all three of them played.
I mean,
I get it, but
we are charging more in football than we charge for other sports. So I do hear you. I understand what you're saying. It's a no-win situation. I'm trying to cover the 56.
so I feel like we're going in the wrong direction again. Like Lisa Belmarsh was such a strong advocate. Let's get rid of user fees. And I don't want to go back there and start adding more now. I know it's tough times. I know we have tough decisions to make. I just can't justify going up on user fees. And I just feel like we need to find another.
I think I bring this up every time. Is there a way that we can start looking into getting, like, there are companies in the town or, to start sponsoring things that we need?
I know,
I would say the signs that used to go around.
Right, the athletic director before, 2 or 3 maybe, I don't know, whatever, sold
The banners.
those banners on the football field. And
They were required to, the upkeep of keeping them looking nice and all that, but it was like
or even just
sides of
charge a
buses,
fee
I don't
for
know.
them to, every year,
The bus.
to renew it. I just
We
think,
talked about that in the past. I think we just need procedures to bring through here.
Mhm.
And I know maintenance is on board with, like you said, a local company pays for one, they pay X amount, and that banner should last 3, 4, 5 years, and you pay an annual fee. And then each season,
Right.
maintenance brings it in, that collaboration would be there. So, we can bring procedures.
We just
It's
got
just
really
would
good, we got
add-
really good printers down in graphics, so I know they can print on vinyl. I might know that.
Can I back up a little bit? The funds that come from MIAA, when do you usually collect that? Like,
End of season. So
End of
if you
every
host a-
season?
If you host a game in the fall. get that in the
Okay.
winter. If you host a game in the winter, you get it.
It would come
spring,
at the end.
spring,
And then-
summer.
And then that comes off of what line item or its own?
Just goes in the bottom line.
It just goes in the bottom and you just take it off the whatever.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, the difference between what we collect and what Rob pays people to be at those games, the difference just falls to the bottom line in the revolving fund.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Frank, do you mind well, 2 things.
Yep.
Can we just did we already ask? Can we make sure that this document is shared with the committee and then put on the website too?
Yes, we're going to do the special ed responses and then this document. as well.
Thank you. And so do you mind scrolling to the, I think it's on the bottom with the hockey, the ideas for the,
Here,
so are these How affected are these numbers, like the 4,000 from increasing the hockey fee? How much are those affected by the family cap?
Oh, good question.
So right now, we are projected to have 7 families hit the family cap all year. So
Are they hockey families?
they will be if we up that number to,
If you add it,
if you add another $50 on user fees,
So-
more kids.
1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
Oh, so it'd be over 7
It'd be
if
7 by 3.
you go up in the user fee.
Even doing those increases, it's still off $3,000.
Mhm.
We're still off.
Which would be
But that-
a coach
they'll-
build or something.
There'll have to be a budget operational increase request regardless.
Right,
Regardless.
yeah.
Bake sale.
It's a lot of brownies.
You haven't had mine before, though. Yeah.
Before I open it up, is there anything else?
I just do really think it's time for us to look at some more creative lines of financing
Funding.
our athletics program, whether that be from corporate sponsorships or just more engagement with our boosters, or any other kind of creative problem solving. I think it's time. We're seeing other districts do it. Baseball fields have those banners.
Yeah.
Lining the
Buses
fence.
have them.
Part of our dilemma is that we do not own our fields, so we could put them up and take them down, put them up and take, which
Sure.
we're all in on. But that's still a lot of sponsorships of $56,000 for signs. We need a little bit more than that. There are, programs we could look into. What I was talking about earlier with the lines of communication between parents and the interactive messaging.
Mhm.
There's sponsorships that can be sold on that stuff too. But again, that would be, probably have to go, Superintendent Curtin, you'd have to help me out here a little, because I don't know if that has to go to policy sub before we can do it.
We have policy, we have existing policies, so it's, I would encourage you, like with the banners, maybe there's a athletics program in another town that has procedures. We just need the procedures to come through here because it's financial, and then we can look and compare to policy, make sure nothing conflicts. So I think that would be a great thing to do. And then I do think the booster collaboration, working with boosters, and again, as long as we can make sure nothing conflicts with policy and procedurally bring it through here, whether it's here or even the athletic subcommittee, I think there's ways we can creatively knock off that amount.
Well, what comes to mind is the senior yearbook, there are sponsors, like they make money to bring the price down, and then programs for theater. Theater have like people
Football
that,
does one too.
and they take out pages, you know what I mean? Like, that's all I
No, I
can,
get it all. the
that
time.
there's way to get,
The program.
market it.
You get one of their list and you get them all.
Yeah, and it's probably going to need to be a piecemeal situation. So some banners,
Something goes,
some ads on the app, some brownies, whatever.
halftime brought to you by.
Yeah, but we've talked about it for a few years, and I think now it's,
Now it's time.
We have to
It's
do it.
time.
yeah.
Is this something that can be brought to athletic sub and really?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, we have on the agenda that we just sent it to Kelly. Just a budget update, right? So I think this is a good opportunity.
Food for thought.
I will open it up to questions and comments from the public now.
We want to do in person first.
Yes, in person first. Go ahead, Jess.
Thank you. Well, it's like, who was it that said it's deja vu all over again? Here we are again, and I think it's going to require what all of you said. I had a lot of questions. I think some of them are going to have to wait because, it was difficult to see the document in terms of the numbers and the calculations and such, but just generally, thank you, Rebecca, for being very clear about your position with respect to fees. It's self-expected to do that, and Tracy as well. I'm sure the rest of the committee feels the same way. I would just repeat what I've said for a decade. There should be no fees. It should be no play to pay. There should be no pay to play sports as an extracurricular activity, particularly when other extracurriculars do not require payments. And so if we're talking about, I'm going to say it again, if we're talking about potentially increasing athletic fees, then I think you need to talk about inserting fees to cover potential costs for other extracurriculars that don't exist now, just in terms of an equity or equality type of an exercise. I don't see that it would be the right thing to do to increase fees just for athletics. We should be going the other way when we're not implementing fees for other extracurriculars. You've heard me say this before. Although Mrs. Curran was not here this evening, she's corrected me twice, I think, and I'm always open to correction. I believe she said that the photography club, Karen, charges some kind of money.
Yes.
Right, so, but my suggestion would be that if the committee ultimately decides to go to the route of increasing fees, then you need to look at implementing fees to cover costs for other extracurriculars across the district, particularly at the high school, in terms of being fair about it. I'll leave the question specific to the money just sort of until we can get the access to the document. If I could go back to the middle school piece, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Rob?
Yep.
Again, I'll leave the questions on the dollars till later, but would other towns still send their teams to us to play competitively with other towns? So if we're not going to travel to them, would other towns still be willing to send their teams to us?
It's one of the things that Ms. Tolan and I did speak about. We would not be in a league anymore, so we wouldn't be paying a league dues. So it would be kind of scheduling on the fly with other towns and trying to get them to come to us.
Yeah, I know.
We have done it with Braintree.
Yeah.
To try to help them out this year a little bit with some sports, but I can't say that everybody's going to just travel to us and we're not going to travel to anybody. That wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I just thought I'd toss it out.
Yeah,
I recognize the challenges.
we did talk about it, and we could probably get some. I don't think we're going to get all.
Yeah. The idea about getting sponsors in the ads, we've talked about that for years too. For some reason, there seems to be this hesitation or this pushback sometimes to doing that, selling it, but it's a need. We've done it before. It's raised significant revenues in the past. I think that's definitely something that needs to be on the table. And whatever issues exist, they have to be overcome. I don't see why we wouldn't go that route to generate some additional revenue by sponsorship banners all over our fields inside the gym. Does the new scoreboard allow for the display of ad recognitions?
Not sure digitally yet. We're not there yet with the scoreboard, but at the least maybe putting temporary signage on.
Chapman's does though, right? Chapman can.
Our message board.
The message
We
board.
create those.
Yeah.
Oh, fancy.
Did I explain it correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, the digital.
Digital sign on the bottom.
Right.
We could sell. We're just
Right.
not there yet.
Coastal heritage or whoever.
We haven't
Okay.
got there yet.
All right, and then just one final question. I'll leave the finance questions, except for this one. Brian, and again, you don't have to have the info now, but I would like to put the question out there. You said that over the course of athletic history, the district has injected additional funds to make up for shortages that might be.
Pandemic and just after.
How much money, when did that happen?
Yeah, we can get that number for sure. So it was really,
Is it a lot?
a lot. So what it was, as we were returning to school, we had the opportunity to use ESSER funds for transportation, other funding sources of transportation. So because costs were so high, if you recall, we were actually socially distancing on buses at one point. We had to actually add buses.
Yes.
So we had ESSER funding.
Everything.
Yeah, we don't go back to that, but we can get that number for you, because that basically, Gus, that was a year-end transfer we do. And so we can get that number for you. It's not substantial, but the important point is that if we're projecting a 35,000, I wasn't comfortable with saying that projected fund balance at the end of the year can help balance this.
Yeah.
I think we have to get a little more responsible in making sure that those revolving funds get back to a healthy level, which completely depleted during the pandemic.
Okay. But those injections, it sounds, they were part of a one-time kind of.
One time.
In terms of additional buses because of
One time.
distancing requirements and things. So
Correct.
we wouldn't expect that there would be the need to do those kind of additional or extraneous injections of funds to cover a shortfall.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And then just one final comment, if I may, I lied.
I figured.
I'm concerned about not backfilling the position for Coach O'Toole in the dungeon. That's been a very helpful and significant program in terms of getting our athletes physically ready. Athletes who are physically ready are less likely to be injured. So I would hate to have that on the table, to not have that position filled. I know that plenty of coaches will likely volunteer, on the team, will do it for the team and all that type of stuff. But I think it was Rebecca that asked the question about the required certifications, or is everybody who's willing to do it actually capable and skilled to do it? So and again, I don't know what that salary cost was for his stipend.
20,000?
20,000 for 4 seasons.
How much was it?
It's $20,000 for 4 seasons.
For 4 seasons.
Summer of the 3 seasons. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so half of the summer and 3 other seasons.
Right.
It's
Okay.
already retired.
That's it for me right now, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ashley.
I have the same question that Tracy had earlier about, is there an age limit for what younger, kids could do, like high school kids? Especially if they have the athletic background, like can they score keep, can they collect tickets? I understand that sometimes the parents get riled up and you're concerned about that piece, but I know that in Pembroke, like for example, teenagers can keep score of the game and kind of wreck the game. So, for high stake games, obviously, probably not a good thing, but for lower stake games, maybe that's an option. I'm also all about empowering kids as far as like when we give them a job to do, it makes them feel empowered and really a part of things. So I think anytime we can include them and encourage, working at a younger age and earning that and responsibility, it's a good thing for them. So I wanted to bring that up. As far as at the middle school for competitive sports and intramural, I do think that there could be a balance, but my concern would be for long-term lack of competitive sports for students without requiring enrollment, as far as like, when people are talking about moving to town or moving out of town or whatever the case may be, they look at the school system, the education, they also look at the sports. So I would be concerned that it would be a turnoff for potential people that want to live in our city and stick around, just kind of what that does for us. I know that it starts at a very young age, the competitive piece. So I was concerned about that. And then I think tapping into the parents' ideas on the subcommittee. I know that there are parents on the subcommittee and parents are really creative at fundraising, like you guys are talking about banners and stuff like that. I think when you do meet at the subcommittee, don't underestimate the power of what parents are capable of, especially when they're very passionate about it. So parents and families can be really passionate about sports. And so I would just encourage you to seek their help on that.
Thank you.
Can I just do a follow-up to what she had mentioned?
I was going to do.
So we're going to team up. Maybe it's the same brain
It
wave.
probably is.
So I don't feel like the middle school makes or breaks a family coming into Weymouth or not, because we have so many families that live in Weymouth that choose Catholic schools that don't have as many opportunities. We have students that even go to the charter schools that don't have the same athletic opportunities. And there are surrounding schools, systems, towns that don't even offer any athletics at the middle school level. So I don't think that is a deterioration. I mean, I know so many kids that went to St. Francis and, the basketball, they didn't have a football team. They didn't have a hockey team. Yeah, they didn't have any, that didn't change the why the parent wanted to, not send them or send them there. We even look at, is charters considered public school? Charter school doesn't have the opportunities of athletics at all levels, not just at the middle school level. So I don't think that that's
Deciding
a
factor.
deciding factor for families to come or stay or not stay. I mean, we have families that leave Weymouth to go to very competitive high schools because of their opportunities for athletics, but I don't see it, a parent's not going to not send their kids to Weymouth for middle school because we're doing intramurals instead of competition.
And just to follow up to the using students, the whole Cory check, you can't Cory check some.
16, you can't do that, 17 and up.
So for us, it's 18, but, so that would be kind of something we would have to look at
Right.
policy wise to use students. I just want to throw that out there. Anybody else?
Rebecca,
No, if you're gonna go.
I will, okay. I just want to make,
Thank you.
I can't see
I didn't write it
behind
down.
you, sir. Is there? You good?
Anyone back there? No. He's like, okay.
I will open it up to Zoom if you can just raise your hand and Rebecca will take care of the rest.
They can, you
Just related to athletics for now and then we'll move on.
Where?
pants.
No hands, last call. I haven't heard that in a while. Okay, thanks, Rob. Is it okay with the committee if we take out of order Chapman so Jen
Yeah,
can go
okay.
home to her family?
thank you.
It's from me.
So is this,
Chapman, yes.
this looks bigger than mine.
This is my printed copy. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to stop bringing readers. Oh, yeah, go right ahead. Quick bathroom break. All right,
High school.
Chapman expense budget. Brian, you want to kick us off or?
Chapman expense.
Chapman,
Yep, so so Jenny can answer any questions, but basically the level service increase of roughly $25,000 is attributable to, we talked about it last week, Mel is reallocating, superintendent, sorry, is reallocating $25,000 from the curriculum district budget to middle school. Happy to answer any other questions as it relates to the expense budget, and then we can get into additional needs after we review the expense lines. So is there any questions or anything I missed you want to speak to, Jenny, in terms of the?
maybe just the 25,000, how that would be spent.
So I actually met with Karen because she has her own curriculum budget line item in her priority areas, so I'm not reinventing the wheel. And I met with my lead teachers about kind of what the criteria is and have kind of a model of cyclical curriculum purchases. And Karen's are academic discourse, social and emotional learning, and curriculum that uses data effectively. And I'm just going to throw in there inclusive curriculum as well. The first area that comes to mind is our sixth grade history curriculum. We've been talking about it for a while. And the standards and what resources we have for those, that would be our first priority area. And looking at meaningful curriculum for sixth grade history. And if any of them fit all of those categories, we'd love to entertain those conversations. And then the next year it might be a world language curriculum and so forth, and putting together that system and structure for that money. And then just the supplemental things that go with the district purchases for curriculum, like the big ideas. Some of our math teachers like the paper workbooks for the middle school kids. We have a new world language textbook, and there are teacher workbooks that go along with those that I've been purchasing. And Open SciEd, we are still using, we're at the end of a supplemental grant for Open SciEd. So I've been purchasing like supply kits and the materials for labs and things like that. So that's what's already in that line item. So that's the big one. Everything else, I just slightly tweaked a little bit. I'm not asking for anything additional. I put more money in Chromebook damage It's big in middle school. And I have to. It's not exciting or anything, just we break a lot of Chromebooks in middle school on the stairs, et cetera. And then more professional development for teachers. A lot of our teachers have been in-house doing some professional development, but there've been more requests for more specialized professional development. So moving more to teacher professional development. And field trips. I had this line item at the bottom for 8,800, and I'm moving some of that to field trips. Field trips are getting extremely expensive, and in middle school, we love field trips. So for the kids that can't afford it, just the entrance fees to Museum of Fine Arts and things like that, I'm trying to supplement that a little bit for our grade level field trips.
And I will add, Jenny mentioned the field trips being expensive, but we've worked on equity piece.
Yes.
So it used to be, kind of any team or grade could go on different field trips. And I think Jenny's done a great job equity wise, making sure that if any child is having experience, the whole grade level is having that experience. So that's why they are a little bit more expensive.
And they all seem to be the month of June.
We have a calendar now. We have a field trip calendar, and I always say the middle school teachers win at getting the town bus. But we're trying to distribute it, especially with MCAS. It's a race to get the dates on the calendar for field trips, but we're doing them by grade level. So the whole sixth grade is going to Patriots Place for a STEM field trip, all on different days. There's 5 different days we're going to Patriots Place, but the whole sixth grade is doing that. All of eighth grade, we're talking about going to the State House on different days, but everybody in eighth grade will have the experience of going to the State House, which has been helpful, but it's also just expensive. So supplementing that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I always was, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was always going to the zoo or going
Yeah.
to the aquarium. Those things the parents do, many of them. They don't need to do that. I like the idea of going to the State House. I like them. I think that's great going to a STEM situation. Like really more curriculum based.
Yes.
Really more thoughtful field trips than just going.
As part of the application, they have to talk about what standards it aligns to.
Because
and
some
why
of
they
them
wanna
have
go
come
there.
across,
Lake Park.
right, and some of them really come across our desk, and I was like, okay,
Yes.
really? Is that really educational?
Can I just pipe in?
Sure.
I really appreciate the initiative, and I can't think of the teacher's name right now, of all the authors that have been
Yes.
coming in.
Yeah.
That's amazing because it's
Katie,
all
thank you.
all the all the students benefit from that. There's
Absolutely.
books and things that they can read that are popular and movies are coming out. So I just appreciate that initiative.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I
It's
actually sat in a couple of them, so
yeah,
just being a
it's
little
great.
book nerd, I go.
Yeah, always, you're always welcome. So those are just kind of the changes in my expense.
Okay.
It's really driven by the 25,000 reallocation from
Yeah.
from curriculum, and then she made some shifts. And then so here's, we talked last time about additional staffing requests. So we started to build out, and we'll finalize next week when we have the primaries come. But just for the cost centers that we've seen from so far, we'll come back to this after, but let's just touch on Chapman. So for Chapman, we looked at adding, so in terms of need, things that the principal came to us that are a high need are here. And as we think about future planning and consideration here, so Rob has left, but for the athletics, no real need this year or next year, I should say, for an assistant athletic director, but he did ask that be put on for planning and future consideration. So for Jenny, hers is more of a need, and I think it's more of a almost compliance piece. But do you want to speak to that, please, Jenny?
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
We have 3 grade levels in our sub-separate SAIL program and 2 teachers. And our SAIL teachers are teaching multiple subjects. It's kind of complicated to explain. But we have an increase in a 5th grade cohort coming in next year. And looking at our SAIL students' grids, they're more complex. So some have B and C grid or split B, split C, and only having 2 people servicing multiple subjects has become increasingly challenging. to do effectively.
For the current students, so those students are not in SAIL the entire day, correct?
Correct.
I know that there is one particular student that is not.
Correct.
All day.
But most of the time they are, or they have co-taught history and science, which we don't have on team unless they're in a sub-separate program. So that SAIL teacher ends up being the special ed teacher in that co-taught history science class. And so then they're teaching ELA, math, history, science, learning support, and sometimes reading too.
And can we just, for the sake of,
For SAIL is Student Academic Individualized Learning. It is the old Intensive Resource Center.
Yep.
It changed 2-3 years ago now.
It's just the 3 grade levels and 2 teachers has just been really challenging the last 2 years, and we have more students for next year.
Yeah, there's a big cohort.
Yeah.
Big group.
Does SAIL go to the high school?
Yes.
Yes.
And we actually have 3 teachers in that program right now, currently.
Well, I also think a third teacher would increase the opportunity for
Yes.
inclusion, which.
I agree.
is bigger.
And it's also aligning with the contract requirements for teachers. They're teaching too many subjects. It's a lot of prep for them.
And unpredictable.
Where they should really be consulting,
Yeah.
and providing that additional.
That's really where we say it's compliance,
Yep.
because it really is contractual and,
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none from the public present? None? Anybody on Zoom, raise your hand. I can't see. Rebecca can.
Yeah. I'm just gonna raise my hand just to make sure we're able to
It's
raise
working.
hands.
I didn't check it.
oh, there you go.
Okay,
You can.
all right. Okay, go hands.
Can I just ask one question?
Go ahead.
So for the instructional equipment supplies for the labs.
Yep.
Culinary, 40,000 from last year and this year is enough to run those programs
Question.
added. It's
No,
funny because culinary knives repairs, in fact, I hope nothing needs to be repaired, but there's nothing there. It's just the 40,000 for.
it's really just like the maintenance of it.
Okay.
Culinary is the most expensive just because of the consumable piece.
Okay.
And obviously the wood. We have had some one-off kind of new cameras or a lens that breaks.
Okay.
But I've been able to kind of manage it from now. It's been working.
Okay.
I'm going to ask, there was rumor that we're going to look to cut a program from the
Fab Lab.
yeah, Fab Lab. Are we still looking to cut?
I'm not cutting, we're doing more STEM.
In Fab Lab or in a different?
For right now, it'll be in makerspace,
Oh, in my.
but more science and engineering. It's a lot of big machines for 11 and 12-year-olds that we have to evaluate.
I agree.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being flexible. Sorry, I cut mine.
No worries.
All right.
So the last, it's high school and CTE, which is, their cost centers are typically combined in this expense budget. Maybe we distinguish between the two. Let's find it here. So Weymouth High School, including CTE, anything with a 31?
31's high school, 33 CT.
Yeah, so anything 1231, anything is high school, and 1233 is CT. We go through this every year, this kind of distinguishing, but it's all housed under the high school, under Principal Monahan, and Director DePina is here. So again, 1231, that is high school, and then 1233 is CTE. So I'll turn it over to people to talk through their budget requests, but as you can see from the document here, it's really shifting because they came in with a level funded budget.
So I'll start off and then I'll hand it over to Mr. DePina so he can talk about CT. And you're using numbers, I'm using a line. All right, so for the high school budget, as Brian said, it is level service funding. We are able to do what we need to do in the budget that we have in front of us. There is a little bit of reallocation. I like to keep the library separated out. And so you'll see that they're in the supplies and the supplies and the contract services of $2,400 and $1,000. You can see further down, that was $3,400 last year. It's just broken out into two different lines. Because as I work on the budget with our financial analysts, we're always looking to make sure that we're recording things properly year to year so that the data is reflecting true numbers. So we're constantly like, oh, no, I think this should go here.
That's Terry Fitzgerald.
Terry Fitzgerald, yes, who is amazing. I'll give her a plug.
That's true. She deserves it.
So the other place you will see an increase is in a line item, which is the paper, the copy paper. So because that has increased, two other lines have decreased minimally just to balance the budget. We are, as far as some of our educational resources that we're using, we are on contracts, and coming into this year will be our third year of some of these contracts. So we will start looking at the contracts, evaluating the data of the usage from our teachers and making sure that we're using it the way we intended. So far, in our second year of IXL, we are now getting there, and it is used in our ELA and math classes. Jenny spoke about field trips, and I just want to bring to the table that we are spending a little money on virtual reality programs. So we are buying headsets. We have one of our department heads, Dr. Goslin, is very much into reality programming, and so she has brought it into her anatomy and physiology class. They are, her and another department head are going to go and do a field trip and record it so that field trip can be brought in-house. We also have an app for social emotional, and we are using it this week during finals for students to have a virtual reality experience on a social emotional level to help support them with anxiety over taking tests. So we are using it. We've used it in a world language as well, just seeing where it goes and the value of it. And it does speak to weekend in that may be very cost prohibitive going out.
Accessibility wise too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So that's really all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DePina.
Alrighty, thank you, and good evening. Samuel DePina, Director of CTE and COA. And the CTE budget will stay the same at $92,536, and this is a continuation from this year's budget for next year, so no increase. And this also, the focus on this is to maintain quality while maintaining and managing the rising cost. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on specifically is highlighting our intentional improvement on communications with the various vendors that we have worked with in the past, and looking at the list going back, I believe, up to 7 years, so that we could analyze and assess, do we need these different vendors? What exactly do they provide in terms of services? And then what services do they provide? And then when we communicate with these vendors for these types of services, how can we improve on these communications so that, I'll give you a perfect example, when they come to our culinary arts program to assess the problem, is there a way that we could tell them what the problem is in advance and they could come in, or a technician could come in and fix the problem instead of charging us to come in to assess the problem and charge us $170 plus the cost to actually repair the piece of equipment. So that allows us to save some money. So working with the same amount of money for $92,536 allows us to think strategically to be able to save on additional cost when working with the different vendors to be able to do that. Part of also thinking about initiatives to be able to spend strategically with that approved amount of money going forward for next year is to continue the safety inspections to make sure that we maintain equipment and avoid costly repairs. Most of the equipment in the 10 programs are 20 years old, a little bit older than that. Some were transferred from Chapman and other schools. So one of the things that we cannot compromise is safety. That's our priority. So we have to make sure that the equipment are not only operational, but then also that it works, and also it works constantly so that not only students are able to use them, but then also it looks appropriate so that students are excited to use the equipment and to continue learning. So that's one of the things that we were able to prioritize with that approved amount of $92,536. And then one of the things that we cannot do, and we have to keep compliance with the DESE and Perkin guidelines, is to avoid supplanting. And I just have to read this because I want to make sure that I get it right. Supplementing, which is part of what we are able to do with the instructional funding for operating budget, is to support some of the things that we use for our CTE programs. Supplanting is what we're able to use with Chapter 74 funding, which is additional fundings for our Chapter 74 programs, for our CTE programs. We cannot supplant. With operational funds, we could use it to buy consumables, and these are instructional materials that we prioritize that students use or consume in the process of learning. For example, when they go through the exploratory process, there are different products, woods in the carpentry programs, flowers and other consumable items that they use in culinary arts in the process of exploring that program. Or when we talk about senior projects, some things that students use to be able to develop a product that shows their knowledge and skills, or that synthesizes the knowledge and skills in that particular program. So when we've done some amazing curriculum work to be able to determine what that is in advance. So that also helps us to be able to determine exactly what the cost is in advance and keep us in alignment with that total amount of $92,365. Hopefully I was able to cover that definition of supplementing versus supplanting.
You did a great job with that, Sam. I just want to thank Sam, acknowledge and thank Sam. So Karen and Sam oversee all the learning that happens in these 10 spaces for 10 programs, but Sam's also the CEO of like 10 little businesses within the high school. And you just heard him talk about culinary, you have auto, you have Cosmo. And so it's the budgets he's overseeing, but some of those spaces generate revenue. He's even looking at like oil changes. Are we at least charging enough to cover the cost of like the filter and the oil? And he mentioned equipment and the amount of equipment that he has to kind of look at. We've done walkthroughs of capital with spaces, and Sam's attention to detail and just short time now, a couple of years into this role, jumped in and really taking it all on. So I just want to acknowledge him and thank him for all his work.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So to sort of add up all of the most expensive items that we have in terms of, looking at the grass, the grease trap cleaning, the ice, machine maintenance, to put all that into the category for contracted services that come, $1,179, the other consumables that we have used for the program. And these are expenses that continue, or reoccurring expenses, which totals to about $28,000, or encumbered funds. We are required to have these agreements for these contracted services every year, just for the compliance for the program. So that's pretty much what brings that amount to that total amount. Prioritizing our instructional needs for the program first, and strategically understanding what it is that students need to be able to learn, do, and produce for each program really helps us to stick to that particular number. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. But understanding, having a focus of what it is that students need to be able to now do and produce. And I think also it's been wonderful having other funds that have been able to support the programs and general gifts and funds that have been earmarked to support the program in the last couple of years have allowed us to maintain the program running smoothly, which I'm very grateful for.
And it highlights the programs, how the program's so well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. The only other changes for the proposed budget for school year 2026 will be the retirement of the graphic printing program. And we will be thinking about how we have to rename that program because the Department of Education has phased out that program at the department level. So we don't have to do anything at the high school level. The frameworks, and I'm using that term intentionally because it has different standards and knowledge and skills that students have to be able to learn and understand and produce, also now will include, and it's exciting because we have the tools already, will include Adobe Premiere. Well, we have all of the Adobe products. So now students will be able to design, students will be able to print, students will be able to do video production, students will be able to do a little bit of animation. So maybe we could think about what we would call the program so that it includes a little bit more than just printing. So part of the difficulties is also thinking about with the expense, with the money that we spent purchasing and buying the Konica Minolta copier and the leasing that we pay for the copy in the program, which last year was $808. And next year, it's going to increase to $1,818.52. How can we now think about projects that we're going to produce to return some of the funds for that investment? And I think with the different projects that we're going to produce, and then also looking in strategically recruiting a licensable, because you don't have to be licensed to be hired for this position, but someone who's qualified and licensed for this position that will come in and think about ideas that we could generate funds for that program. The current teacher in the program has put in paperwork and he said that he will officially retire by the end of the school year.
Just give me a good deal in the budget books, that's all I.
I know, thank you.
That's pretty much it.
No, insurance increase?
No insurance increase. Yeah, that stays the same for the blanket insurance for the students.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Which, thank you for that. We have that for both CTE and athletics.
Okay. Go ahead, Miriam.
So for that, I guess I'm going to call it the graphics department still. Are all the IMAX, are they up to, I know that they're probably hitting the end of their lifespan, but they need to be updated.
IMAX?
Yeah,
Are we,
in
oh,
the graphics department.
Oh, the desktops.
The desktops.
The desktops.
oh, no, I thought,
But they are matched.
The Mac lab.
Yeah, for the Mac
right?
labs.
Yep.
We're having conversations about that, and the true thing about the Apple desktops that's there, for the program advisory committee members, they're recommending Mac computers.
Mhm.
Because that's what they're using in the industry. But
industry,
with a lot of the question is it hardware specific or is it software based? Because if we could have the software and we have 2 computers in there, and I'm actually testing those computers in the graphic communication lab and it's working, and we've never had issues with them. Is it cheaper to actually go PC based? And the answer is yes. And those 2 computers that actually, no, 3 computers that we have down there have worked this year flawless without a problem.
Yeah, with the software.
So if, and that's the sort of battle that I'm having now, because every single program advisory member for the program for the last 2 years have recommended on the form that we should purchase Mac computers for that form.
Mhm.
But we have not had a single issue in students using the computer and the software, every single software on the PC computers to be able to accomplish the same outcome for that computer. So when we look at competencies and the frameworks and what students need to know and be able to do, it's not hardware specific. It can't be software specific because it's related to Adobe.
Thank you.
Maybe a donation from a local Apple source.
I know.
Like, for example.
I didn't want to say it.
And maybe at least,
I really like our hard tops a lot.
Chapman Middle School, there,
I
the
would
Mac
agree.
lab and Final Cut is Mac specific, Mac native.
Right.
Doesn't have to be for us.
Yeah.
Okay, and I
So
know
it
that there,
will be a cheaper replacement, and so that will
To
be in the
do
next 2
PC.
years to do PC.
yeah.
I'll hide all my logos. Other question, so I know that there's machinery in the actual, on the floor, the workshop, that we're not using. because it's outdated or whatever, is there a way to, I don't know, send it? Somewhere.
Facebook yard sale.
Well,
Something.
I mean, it's a lot of metal and it's, I know that there's one that it won't actually fit through the doors, like it'll have to be
Correct.
taken apart to get,
I
but
had
it would make
three,
room for more things.
yeah, I had three different vendors come in last year and one this year to come look at it, and it was super expensive. I think the cheapest quote we got to get one of the vendors to remove it, it was close to like $2,700. And to remove it, meaning break it down inside the shop.
Right,
Then
so they can
we
move it
can get
out.
it out through the.
But I would imagine somebody needs the parts.
And maybe metal
It would
fabric, you go in
impact-
with their tools and
Impacts
just.
the program too.
So, and, well, and the issue is with a lot of those machines going back to 25, 30 years old, it focuses on the mechanical aspects
Right,
of printing, where now the new frameworks is all about designing, because most of printing could be done elsewhere.
Mhm.
And that was the major push
Yeah.
towards the
and
new
everyone thinks
frameworks.
they're an artist.
And printing, besides high quality printing.
I come
it's
from
not
the
really
advertising world,
expensive
everyone
anymore
thinks they can do
to
it
be
now.
able to do it.
I don't.
And that lab.
I could use some support with that, because, that's one of the things that I'm struggling with. How can we get rid of those equipment safely,
Right.
but also
Mhm.
cost efficient?
I think there was-
haven't been able to find a solution for that.
Modification on the building since 2004.
Yeah, it was the door, with the doors.
built
The
around
overhead
it.
door was-
We built around it.
The doors. But I mean, there might be,
Closed it in.
there could be a printer or someone that has the ability to dismantle or whatever that might donate there.
Yeah.
Again, with the sponsorship,
Yeah.
like, can we find
And
someone?
two of the companies said they couldn't take it because some of the printers had chemicals
The
inside.
chemicals inside, you have to
There's
move
a
them.
new.
I bet
For the love of pancakes.
blood if it
It's
has
going down with the ship then.
There's a basin or whatever.
That's the expense, isn't it? Is this, part of it is disposable.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have to remove any
The basins or
liquid that's
whatever.
inside
Yeah.
before they could pick it up.
I may one more. Do you all, I'm gonna kind of focus a little bit on carpentry. So it was brought to my attention that some of these students have to change. Is there a changing space for the students?
We're exploring that as well, and
Can they
that's,
build like a booth or what, a changing booth or something?
we can't. Now we're also have an equity issue there, because we can't send them to a different area of the building for equity purposes.
Right,
So that
because then
would
they're losing
present,
time on learning if they're.
right, it not only does impact time on learning, but also presents bias,
Mhm.
because we would to the boys. So, there's a room adjacent to the metal fabric that we're also in. It's a perfect room because it's an actual room that we have additional lockers that we could transition into that room. Now, it brings us back to the same original question about some of the equipment that we no longer need. How do we get rid of some of those equipment that are also no longer used in the industry?
Okay.
And how do we sell those equipment or auction some of those equipment? So maybe you might be able to help me with that, or get
Okay.
rid of some of those equipment. But most of those auto and metal fab related equipment have liquids in them, and we can't just throw them out.
Right, okay.
Does that mean you have a significant increase in female?
They do.
We do, so that's.
I was a graduate of metal fabrication.
But not just that, but also English language learners in the graphic communication programs with a lot of the
Really?
migrants, well, immigrants, because you can't swim from Haiti, right? But, coming to the United States.
Mhm.
And a lot of the Puerto Rican population in the graphic communications and also in IT programs.
That's
So
awesome.
that was
Yeah.
a feedback on the Perkins grant.
Mhm.
And we were actually able to implement that. So that's very good. And last year, part of this purchase, which also included the full PC that we purchased from IT, was part of your operating budget. So thank you for that. We supported this, which is very.
So talk to me about, talk to me about enrollment. What does it look like? Is there any shop area that's decreasing? Is there any shop area that's like way overflow? We had at one point an opportunity to do robotics, but we couldn't find a teacher. So
Heartbreaking.
that was very heartbreaking. Tell me about enrollment. What does that look like? What does that piece
In
look
general,
like?
so
And my second part is the fee, I know, sorry, I had a lot of caffeine today. I'm like, woo. Is the middle school program helping to feed the high school program? So there's my two-part question.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the second part of your question.
Okay,
I think with the transition to design and visual communication, the design for Chapman will help to increase the enrollment with the design and visual communication, because then we have a true or a better curriculum alignment. With the multimedia program at Chapman, it doesn't fully align with the graphic printing because graphic printing is really static. With design and visual communication, which is still design, now having access to Adobe Premiere, now you can make your design move. Hence you have animation or video or concept or elements of video, which with the middle school curriculum for media production, you're able to do, or some of that aspect or competency is covered in middle school. So you have some vertical alignment there versus what it is now. You have some aspects of mostly video production and audio production happen in middle school, and you come to high school, there's electives that may cover some of that with photography. And then for the CTE alignment, we don't have that. There's no media arts program. We are thinking about exploring other options for CTE program, but it's not media arts. One of the programs that we're looking at is for legal and protective services, specifically the criminal justice curriculum with different services and employment opportunity, employment trends in this area. So I've submitted the letter of intent. DESE requires, and the Department of Education requires, that we attend this new equity meeting called Design for Equity. And once we attend this meeting, then there's next steps for documentations. And there's a process, and the whole process takes 3 years before this, all of this goes through. So this will help us with our waiting list and your question about getting students that we have on the wait list and increasing our enrollment. Every single year, or for the last 2 years that I've been here, we get a lot of students applying. So we usually accept, or we used to, looking at the data or making data-informed decision, we used to get around like 194, 200 students applying for CTE, and usually 190, 180 students will get accepted. That number doesn't work very well, because when you do that math, you could only place safely in the shops between 17 to 18 students in the programs. And then you look at cosmetology, by the cosmetology board, 12 students in that shop. So we're going to accept students, and then some of those students will not be able to get into their top 3 choices. And our admission policy is written such that we should guarantee them, or at least promise them, that they'll be able to get their first, second, and third choice. If we accept 190 students, 194, then we get a lot of angry emails, and we do, and a lot of angry phone calls. So the number that works better is around 177, 180.
Okay, and then my other comment is, I belong to a directors group for childcare on the South Shore, and they wanted for me to express to you, thank you, because they hadn't done co-op outside of Johnson in years. And they are seeing co-op students coming back into the childcare, and they hadn't seen that in years, like 30 years.
Yeah.
And so they just wanted to make sure that kudos to you for bringing that back.
Well, thank you. We actually have 3 co-op meetings just for early childhood education this week.
Fabulous.
And,
Nice to know.
It's going to be more co-op opportunities for EC coming up.
Fabulous.
Any further questions from the committee? I will open it up to those present here. Gus,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Just going back to that, first of all, Karen, Sam, thanks. You always come fully informed, you provide great information. So, thank you for doing it yet again. At the high school, the chart costs and the Adams program, alternative program at Adams, I'm not sure what it's called now, but those costs are rolled into all of the women's.
They
high school
are,
costs.
yes.
Sam, are there any contractors, or are there any donations of materials and supplies from community contractors? All of those contractors that are building all over Weymouth, do they talk to you about donating excess material, whether it's lumber, whether it's sheet metal, whether it's this, whether it's that? Any of that going on?
The biggest donation that I've received, and I don't have a value to it associated with the donation. It came from New England New England Metal Fabrication, and I believe they are in Weymouth. And so they donated metal scraps for our metal fabrication program.
Okay.
So that's the biggest donation that I've received so far, but I think it would be great. And that this is additional conversation that I'm looking to partner up with Ms. Harris to be able to tap in. There's a lot of construction going on.
Right.
We certainly have reached out, but we get a lot of, we will look into this, we'll get back to you, but we don't actually receive the consumable items because they're also using them for business purposes. It would make a tremendous
The
difference
night just.
in our shops, but then also to be able to supplement some of the work that we're doing in the shops and also opportunities to go out and work if we were able to get some of these consumables. Especially as we're continuing, no longer capstone, but senior projects to be able to do these tasks.
Yeah, it would be, this comment is pie in the sky, probably not realistic, but it would be tremendous if on the town side, if permitting approvals had attached to them some kind of, thing that, yeah, we will approve this permit to have you do this construction, but you will have to also then donate some materials, whether it's extra materials.
That would be a pie in the sky.
Wouldn't that be?
We'll call it a recycling program.
Yeah.
I reaced out earlier this year, reached out to Suffolk Construction, and they said they have an exclusive agreement with Boston Schools to donate such things. They're going to do it to Weymouth, and it has to do with the structure in Weymouth falls on the poverty line of the 40-60. So I'm wondering if there's a lot of that, and I don't have all the information for the structuring, for the finances for Weymouth, but I'm wondering if that's part of one of
Why
the
we don't
reasons
get
why
it.
a lot of that donation.
Thank you.
I don't think it would
Curious
hurt.
about that one. I know that we heard that there's classes that are generating some revenue, like oil changes in cars and things. Is carpentry still doing that? In the old days, my in-laws had a shed built by the carpentry students at CTE, and they paid, they paid for the materials, and something, a little bit of an increased cost. And I think
That was
that
my
people,
capstone
the program also used to build garages, and all kinds of things.
There's a form
Curious if
still.
they still do, if you still do some of that, or why it's, and this is before your time, but why it stopped, is it not viable, is it a liability issue? I'm just interested in terms of revenue perspective.
We're doing some of that. I think part of the miscommunication is the information that used to be on the older website. And with the conversion to the new website, some of the link in the form that existed for communication purposes where you could go and request for services, some of that is no longer available. So part of the communication that we need to continue is to, and this is part of ongoing communication with the technology team, is to recreate all of that to support the communication with the community in general, to create pretty much a workflow, an agenda, an updated agenda on the CTE website, but then specifically for each CTE program as a small business, and also have an aspect of student involvement of the services that we provide for the community. What does that look like? But then also, how do we process, and this is a bigger question and I don't have the answer for this, how do we process payment for some of these things? And we don't have all of that taken care of. That's where we're going.
Check.
There's limitations. to
Weymouth Public Schools.
There's limitations to Google Forms or Google applications. We could put a QR code, we could create flyers, we could share information. But essentially, when you receive payment or a transaction takes place, where does it go? With PO and invoices. So we need some work and a little bit more information before we could synthesize all of that.
We have to work with town treasury really to get that platform and that.
But the only other addition to that, with the drafting program, we are now also providing community services where if you have an idea, if you're pitching an idea for something that you want to do to your new home, or if you want to add an extension to your house, we are able to do 3D rendering using the same industry software that. Which is in draft. I'm not sure if they did that in draft, and certainly didn't happen for the last 2 to 3 years. I checked, going back to 3 years ago, it wasn't a service that was provided.
Okay, and then just 2 more quick. I'd like your opinion or your feeling about the potential changes that are being discussed in terms of how students actually are accepted into a CTE program. We're all aware that there's a push for making it a lottery instead of making it, a required qualification kind of a process. Right now. it's
Yes, it is, yep.
Weymouth is staying with the merit-based qualification process. Do you ever see us moving away from that and going to a strict lottery process like a lot of places look to be doing?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
What my preference is, my personal preference for what it's worth is the way we're doing it now.
Yeah, and we, Ms. Monahan and I, we had this conversation about this, and we're gonna stick with what we have right now. Also because the data from DESI, and then also recent data from Pioneer Institute, recent data from Massachusetts Association of Vocational Administrators also supports that. Because when we look at the proposal and the suggestion to go to, to the lottery base, it still doesn't solve the problem for the limited seats that we have for placing students into CTE schools.
Right.
It changes the selection process for choosing students or accepting students, but you still don't have, you're still not going to change the 12 students that we can accept into cosmetology or the 14 in carpentry program.
And how do you-
The only change is how we make
You decide
the selection for students.
Along those lines,
if the lottery.
is our restriction of
Everybody
numbers
wants
of students
two-shot area.
just strictly a physical space one? We can't take, we don't accept more students into our CTE programs. Is it primarily because of our physical space limitations? Or could the program be bigger?
That's why the.
Well, it's three. So one, it's physical. Two, it's regulations by the Department of Education, also for safety purposes. So for example, we might be able, I'll give you another example as it relates to metal fabrication. We only have 14 bays. So in terms of equity, we're not gonna have 2 to 3 students in that tiny bay, practicing the fundamentals of welding. It's not safe. It doesn't work.
Okay.
So can we squeeze in 16 students in there? Probably. Is it safe? Absolutely not.
Equal
And then
opportunity.
also how our schedule works as a comprehensive CTE school, when we have juniors and seniors together. And the teacher to student ratio, we can only have so many student to teacher ratio or teachers teaching so many students at the same time.
Right. And then one final question is a comment, really. We had heard some rumors, but now they're not rumors. It's actually going to come to fruition. Apparently the old St. Jerome School in North Weymouth is now going to house a CTE program run by like the Don Bosco model. I'm curious about one, if you were aware of that, because it sounds like it's a done deal, but it's actually going to happen. I don't know what the start date is supposed to be, but what kind of an impact would that have? Would the kids that we don't accept into the Weymouth High School CTE program, would that overflow potentially go there, or would it negatively impact us in some way? Have we heard anything?
We don't have a lot of information. We don't know the shops, so the shops they'll offer is a big piece of it.
The
So we
cost?
really haven't been given much information, other than like you're saying, it's
Program, was it?
Don Bosco, Archdiocese, so it's gonna be this.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it would impact if parents could afford it, if it's gonna be a tuition cost. But I'm sure we'd have to they could end up having electrical or plumbing that we don't have. So, HVAC, all that sort of stuff that we can't afford.
Any unionized.
It's also private, so I don't know the.
we recently heard that, and I don't know about the chapter 74.
Yes.
I don't think it's, but we'll look into it.
Close the doors.
All right, anybody else from the public? Go ahead, Ashley.
I just want to say thank you, and also thank you for the last meeting I attended via Zoom, and the model of communication in the last meeting was really great. So I just wanted to say thank you to the chair for the last meeting. The model of discussion was very productive, and we got to ask questions as we went along.
I will on Zoom open it up to Zoom. I'll also open it up to public comment. If anybody wants to comment related to anything that's on the agenda, just raise your hand on Zoom.
Oh, I have two things.
My neck is very stiff. You
Well,
good?
good.
I will close public comment and take a motion to adjourn.
So,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I tried it, yeah.
I was.
He's the extender, yeah, thank you.
I know, but if we don't do it
Backing up,
tonight,
wait, we didn't.
So, so as we talked early in the meeting about the asks We call it the needs list.
It's an overview.
There was nothing related to high school or CTE. So just quickly, and we'll go over this in more detail next meeting when we have the primaries here, but just for tonight, where we are so far. So again, our anticipated, needs, higher needs, prioritized needs, if you will, compliance potentially, and then our kind of planning and consideration for the future. So we talked about the athletics, we talked about Chapman district. So we're looking at the 3 teachers that we're adding for the modulars for West, Nash, and Hamilton. We're hoping through attrition, we will cover that cost. Student services here last time, so there was discussion last time around the ABA, RBT, SLP increase, the district RBT, which is the maintaining the 2 we've added this year and adding a 3rd, and then adding KCEP. We can talk about that next time, but we've memorialized them here in this document. And so we want to share this document tonight so you can see it. We'll talk about it more next meeting, and then it'll be in our, final preliminary budget meetings before we get into the hearing of what our, in addition to level service, what our compliance and needs requests are. So we're kind of bringing that back where we didn't have it last year.
So is this document available online or to
Not
us
yet.
in the blog or something so that we
Not
could?
yet.
No.
No, because we want to, we're still finalizing the hearings with the buildings.
Mhm.
So next meeting, we'll have a draft of everything. And then that document will be reviewed throughout the remaining budget meetings at the hearing. So
Okay.
any folks who have been around for a few years remember the needs list. It's basically that, but we really have to be intentional in prioritizing of, what's a compliance, what's need, and what's kind of a future consideration.
Related to the CEP piece, can we write where that CEP is going to be? Is
So
that
did-
Hamilton or West?
I believe we talked about it with,
It's West. I mean, it would
It's
traditionally
West,
would be West, yeah.
but it'll come up in the primary conversation.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they will discuss
Yeah.
that. And again, I don't see a BCBA there. And that will be a hill I will. die.
So we do need to, we put it on here under other requests, BCBA.
Okay,
But I think as we go through the primaries next week, that conversation has to
it's gonna,
continue.
okay.
Yeah, but only because we promised it last time that we'd bring this back tonight,
Start it. Thank you.
starting the conversation.
Thanks.
Danielle, there's one person on Zoom. I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh, no, you have one person question?
Yeah, but do you,
And then the other thing was just timeline. Mel's going to talk about this in her update tomorrow night, but
we have to meet tomorrow night.
tomorrow night, yes. Budget presentation is
I'm glad you feel that way too.
Geez, thanks.
budget timeline. We've always had this kind of overarching school budget schedule. I won't mention by name, but I had, have an amazing team and someone helped with this last slide, but I think just kind of, it basically takes this 3-month period that is crucial in this whole budget process and just clearly defines January, February, March. I can't take credit for these they're amazing. But I want to thank that person. Melissa either.
It's only you, Brian.
It's me, I just do
All
it.
those hearts ready to go.
Don't want to admit.
Actually saw him making it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Mel shares up tomorrow night. This will be part of the budget presentation, but we also specifically, because the chair requested, this will be a document that'll be on the website, just so people are aware of the important meetings coming up.
I didn't say it should have be so cute, but yeah.
There's one person on Zoom who has a hand up. Do you want, Danielle, just,
Yes, go ahead.
oh.
I don't know how to, but
We have a hand up from Nancy on Zoom, and if you want to unmute yourself, you can. Nope.
feedback.
On the
Maybe she-
next page, maybe,
Maybe she did
right?
it by
Is that her
accident.
underneath?
She's on, yeah, her mic is,
Oh, yeah, just
She's
hit
still muted.
fast while mute.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, everybody's able to unmute themselves right now.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay,
She's just giving a high five.
okay. I will close
You like
public
that?
now. Can I adjourn?
Are we good, Brian?
We're good now.
Yes.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
See you tomorrow.
Night.
Good night.